Under the leadership of Austrian Prince Metternich, the Congress of Vienna tried to restore the old monarchies and territorial divisions that had existed before the French Revolution. On an international level, this attempt to turn back history succeeded. For the next century, Europeans seldom turned to war to solve their differences. Within these countries, however, the effort failed. Revolutions erupted across Europe between 1815 and 1848. In the first half of the 1800s, opposing ideologies, or systems of belief, developed. These competing ideologies plunged Europe into revolution in the mid-1800s. The three major political ideologies were conservatism, liberalism, and radicalism. Conservatives were mostly monarchs, nobles, and church leaders. They believed in social hierarchy and monarchy, and imposed Enlightenment ideas about liberty and equality. Edmund Burke, a member of Parliament who wrote critically about the French Revolution, and Joseph de Maistre, a French émigré who supported hierarchy and traditional religion, were influential conservative thinkers. Liberals drew their inspiration from the Enlightenment, especially the ideas of John Locke and Adam Smith. Liberals were mostly middle-class businessmen and professionals. They believed in natural rights and wanted government power to be limited by laws and constitutions. They supported giving middle-class men the right to vote. Radicals drew their support from workers and intellectuals. Like liberals, they believed in natural rights and constitutional government, but radicals opposed monarchy and wanted greater social and economic reform. Radicals wanted republics based on universal manhood suffrage, or the right of all men to vote. Radicals were influenced by the radical thinkers of the Enlightenment, such as Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Sometimes liberals and radicals worked together against conservatives, but they often also fought with each other over reform efforts. As conservatives, liberals, and radicals debated issues of government, a new movement called nationalism was emerging. This movement would blur the lines that separated these political theories. Nationalism is the belief that one's greatest loyalty should be not to a king or an empire, but instead to a nation of people who share a common culture and history. When the nation also had its own independent government, it became a nation-state. Modern nationalism and the nation-state grew out of the French Revolution. After overthrowing the king, the revolutionary leaders stressed the unity and equality of all French people. No longer loyal to the king, the idea of national unity and equality fostered a sense of pride in the French. That pride, in turn, helped French citizens' armies win stunning victories for the revolution. The first people to win self-rule during this period were the Greeks. For centuries, Greece was part of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans controlled most of the Balkans. That region includes all or part of present-day Greece, Albania, Bulgaria, Romania, Turkey, and former Yugoslavia. Greeks, however, had kept alive the memory of their ancient history and culture. Spurred on by the nationalist spirit, Greeks demanded that their country take its place among the nation-states of Europe. Because of this movement, a major Greek revolt broke out against the Ottoman Turks in 1821. In his poetry, British Romantic poet Lord Byron compared modern Greek nationalists to the ancient Spartans. The sword, the banner in the field, glory and Greece, around us see. The Spartan borne upon his shield was not more free. In 1823, Byron made a large personal gift of £4,000 to the Greeks. After that, he went to Greece. There he volunteered as a soldier for the Greek cause. He soon commanded a group of Greek soldiers. Unfortunately, he would not live to see the victory of the cause he fought for. In February of 1824, a cold Greek rain drenched the poet. Soon afterward, he caught a fever. He died from his illness in April. The most powerful governments opposed revolution in all its forms. However, the cause of Greek independence was popular with people around the world. Orthodox Christian Russians, for example, felt a spiritual connection to Greek Orthodox Christians, who were ruled by Muslim Ottomans. Educated Europeans and Americans loved and respected ancient Greek culture, which they spent years studying in school. Eventually, with growing popular sympathy for Greece, the powerful nations of Europe took the side of the Greeks. In 1827, a combined British, French, and Russian fleet destroyed the Ottoman fleet at the Battle of Navarino. By 1830, Britain, France, and Russia signed a treaty recognizing the full independence of Greece. By the 1830s, the return to the old order so carefully arranged at the Congress of Vienna was breaking down. Liberals and nationalists throughout Europe were openly revolting against conservative governments. In most cases, the liberal middle class, which consisted of teachers, lawyers, and business people, led the struggle for constitutional government and the formation of nation-states. Not surprisingly, the revolutionary fervor that swept Europe in the 1830s began in France. Louis XVIII had died in 1824 and been succeeded by his younger brother Charles X. In 1830, Charles tried to stage a return to absolute monarchy by limiting freedom of speech and the press and dismissing the national legislature. These actions sparked riots and violent protests that forced Charles to flee to Great Britain. In the wake of the Revolution of 1830 in France, revolutionary zeal swept across Europe. This led Austrian Foreign Minister Clemens von Metternich to sarcastically observe that when France sneezes, Europe catches cold. Nationalist riots broke out against Dutch rule in the Belgian city of Brussels. In November 1830, Belgians finally declared their independence from Dutch control. In Italy, nationalists worked to unite the many separate states in the Italian peninsula. Some were independent, some were ruled by Austria, and some by the Pope. Eventually, Metternich sent Austrian troops to restore order in Italy. The Poles, living under the rule of Russia, staged a revolt in Warsaw late in 1830. Russian armies took an entire year to crush the Polish uprising. By the mid-1830s, it seemed as if the old order had re-established itself. But with the political instability of the period, that impression did not last long. In France, Charles X was replaced by his cousin, Louis Philippe, who had long supported liberal reforms in France. However, in 1848, after a lengthy reign of almost 18 years, Louis Philippe eventually fell from popular favor. Louis Philippe's government was corrupt, and his policies favored the middle class at the expense of workers. The French economy was also struggling, with high unemployment and rising prices. The people of Paris rose up in revolt once more, and Louis Philippe fled. This time, radical revolutionaries abolished the monarchy and established a republic. After the success of the Revolution of 1848, one of the leaders of the revolution, the famous poet Alphonse de Lamartine, proclaimed, "We are making together the most sublime of poems." Far from being inspiring, however, the new Republican government began to fall apart almost immediately. The radicals split into factions. One side, led by Lamartine, wanted only political reform. The other, led by Louis Blanc, demanded social and economic reforms. The differences set off bloody battles in the streets of Paris. The violence turned French citizens away from the radicals. As a result, a moderate constitution was drawn up later in 1848. It called for a parliament and a strong president to be elected by the people. In December 1848, Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, the nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte, won the presidential election. 4 years later, Louis Napoleon took the title of Emperor Napoleon III, which a large majority of French voters surprisingly accepted. The French were weary of instability and welcomed a strong ruler who would bring peace to France. As France's emperor, Louis Napoleon built railroads, encouraged industrialization, and promoted an ambitious program of public works. Gradually, because of Louis Napoleon's policies, unemployment decreased in France, and the country experienced real prosperity. As in 1830, the revolutionary events in France in 1848 inspired revolts against the conservative order throughout Europe. In Budapest, nationalist leader Louis Kossuth called for a parliament and self-government for Hungary. In Prague, Czech liberals demanded independence for Bohemia from Austrian rule. An unruly mob in Vienna clashed with police. The violence forced Metternich to resign and flee. In Italy and the German states, nationalists rose up and demanded unification. The revolutionary spirit of 1848 was short-lived, however. Many liberal gains were lost to conservatives within a year, and one country after another, the revolutionaries split over how to achieve reform and failed to unite themselves or their nation. Conservatives exploited this and used military force to regain their power. By 1849, Europe had practically returned to the conservatism that controlled governments before 1848. The revolutionary spirit of the 1800s even reached Russia. Unlike Western Europe, Russia had yet to make its leap into the modern industrialized world. Under Russia's feudal system, serfs were bound to the noble whose land they worked, and nobles enjoyed almost unlimited power over them. By the 1820s, many Russians believed that serfdom must end. In their eyes, the system was morally wrong. It also prevented the empire from advancing economically. The czars, however, were reluctant to free the serfs. Freeing them would anger the landowners, whose support the czars needed. Eventually, Russia's lack of development became obvious to Russians and to the whole world. In 1853, Tsar Nicholas I threatened to take over part of the Ottoman Empire in the Crimean War. However, Russia's industries and transportation system failed to provide adequate supplies for the country's troops. As a result, in 1856, Russia lost the war against the combined forces of France, Great Britain, Sardinia, and the Ottoman Empire. This was a humiliating defeat for the Tsars. As the war came to an end, Tsar Nicholas I died and was succeeded by his son Alexander II. When the war ended in 1856, Alexander decided to move Russia toward modernization and social change. Through his reforms, Alexander and his advisors believed that Russia would compete with Western Europe for world power. The first and boldest of Alexander's reforms was the Edict of Emancipation, a decree freeing the serfs in 1861. The abolition of serfdom, however, went only halfway. Peasant communities, rather than individual peasants, received about half the farmland in the country. Nobles kept the other half. The government paid the nobles for their land. Each peasant community, on the other hand, had 49 years to pay the government for the land it had received. So while the serfs were legally free, the debt still tied them to the land. Political and social reforms ground to a halt when terrorists assassinated Alexander II in 1881. His successor, Alexander III, tightened Tsarist control on the country. Alexander III and his ministers, however, encouraged industrial development to expand Russia's power.